This was absolutely way too much content to try and condense down to a 20-minute video, so this will be the last time that I do it. For TSW7, every new root is getting its own more fledged out video. And I was thinking of scrapping this one entirely, but I put a lot of time into it, so I'm going to give it to you and not do things this way again. Enjoy. So, Train Sim World 6. It is the latest yearly entry in the franchise, building 3 brand new routes, 3 deluxe extras, and a handful of new features meant to push immersion. The real standouts are random faults, random delays, and temporary speed restrictions, proper passenger announcements, and even new passenger ambience. Now, quick disclaimer before I get too far into this review that it is just that, a review and not a complete overview of absolutely everything that you're going to be getting, showing you everything in action. The intent of this video is to share my own brutally honest experience after more than 40 hours of gameplay and over 20 hours of footage captured. I'm going to be touching more on what worked, what didn't, and whether I think TSW6 is worth your money or not. Now, I'm not an ambassador, I'm not affiliated with Dovetail Games, they didn't send me any code for this. I paid for this with my own money, and everything you're going to hear in this review is in my own personal words from my own time spent within the game. Now, to dive into core features, random faults are, in my own opinion, the single most impactful addition. They make every run unpredictable. You don't know if the pantograph is going to drop, a wiper will stick, or if a door jamb is going to hold you up at a stop. And I also love that they're never fatal. Nothing will end your service. But the problem here with them is balance. Right now, they happen way too often. I've had runs where I fixed an engine fault only for another to pop up a minute later, over and over again. On one Morristown run, I had more than 10 faults trigger in less than half an hour. On the Riviera line, the Class 150 and the Voyager had engine faults piling up constantly, and these excessive occurrences definitely break immersion instead of adding to it. Now, Dovetail has said they're looking to reduce the frequency of faults in a future patch, and I really hope that is true and that we see it soon because the system itself is very strong. I really do like that faults are recoverable. A door jamb is pretty easy to spot because you will literally see the door stuck half closed. A pantograph drop or a wiper freezing feels believable. It's really just the sheer frequency right now that kills it. And one thing that would really help is a simple checklist UI. Let's say, for example, if 3 faults were to fire within a 1 to 2 minute period while you're in between station stops, it's pretty easy to forget which one you've already fixed and which ones need fixing, especially if you have multiple engine failures happening and things that you have to do that require you to get up out of your seat. I think a little list that clears items as you work through them would help, and faults definitely need their own toggle and settings separate from the general driver helper prompts that you see at the top left side, so you don't have to enable the whole HUD just to know something has gone wrong. Now, random events and delays are more subtle. Signal delays, at least in my own experience, felt pretty invisible. Didn't really notice much happening there, but they are happening. But temporary speed restrictions, these are a really nice touch, though too rare and disconnected from what you see trackside. I'd love to see them tied to weather conditions, more in rain or snow, fewer in clear weather, and potentially have correlating scenery tiles, maybe with track crews. I do seem to get at least one every run, which is nice, but it would be even better if we had multiple occurrences of them on a single run. I'm not sure if that's something that is officially implemented, but in my own experience, I've only ever had one per run. Now, announcements are another big win here. The first time I heard a proper station announcement, it felt so immersive, though I've also ran into several times where announcements were wrong, like in a Class 802, approaching Starcross and the announcement playing as Plymouth, and other times announcements skipped entirely. On the Riviera line in Leipzig to Dresden, they generally felt pretty natural, while on the Morristown line, the voices sounded just a little bit robotic to me. Now, the big disappointment with them is that some of the more dynamic phrases teased in previews, like announcements about being stuck at a red and being delayed, don't actually seem to exist within the final game. And if they somehow do, I haven't experienced them in my own gameplay. Now, add in the bugs where some stop skip entirely. It's definitely not flawless, but I think the feature itself is exactly what I have wanted in TSW for years, and generally it functions very well. Now, passenger ambience makes a huge difference here. Coaches feel alive in a way that they didn't before, with chatter scaling up in busy cars and quiet cars actually staying quiet. Now, it isn't perfect. You still see mannequin-like passengers staring straight ahead while you hear them talking. There are little touches like sneezing which do help, though the sneeze sound effect could use variety. In my opinion, adding coughing, louder, more distinct, and occasionally cutting through the chatter would really sell it. Even subtle animations like looking at phones and talking amongst themselves would make the ambience line up with what you actually hear. So fast travel, route hopping, the live map, scenario planner, livery designer, and formation designer are all basically unchanged from TSW5, and timetable layer control also got a minor update. It now shows how many layers you have. My game said 25 of 25, for example, for one of my DLCs, yet scrolling through showed plenty of grayed out DLC I don't actually own. So I think it seems to be counting what's enabled versus what I own, not what's possible overall. Now, conductor or guard mode also behaves pretty much like it did in TSW5, bugs and all. Tickets can still be misread. Sometimes you reject a destination not on the current map, even though it is a valid ticket in real life for that particular service. The training center is largely unchanged, with the one new addition tied to the free starter pack that players can claim at launch. Now, performance is still a tale of two setups. On default DirectX 11, the game still stutters, it still hitches, and occasionally freezes just like it has in the past. I don't think any major improvements were done there. On DirectX 12 with my custom engine.ini tweaks, it runs much smoother, and I even noticed some improvement over TSW5 on the new core routes. Now, across 40 plus hours, I actually didn't have a single crash. A little surprising, yes, but relieving. With that said though, console players had a much rougher time at launch. Xbox initially shipped with an older build, which caused flickering textures and other issues until updates were pushed. PlayStation players reported audio popping and cracking. Now, Dovetail is patching, but as of this recording, PC is the smoother place to be. We also don't yet know how consoles will handle these routes once all the layers are downloadable. Now, visually, I would say the scenery quality on the new routes is a big step up. Riviera in particular looks absolutely gorgeous, phenomenal. Lighting quirks in tunnels and at night definitely still crop up. Weather transitions still feel abrupt, with fog popping in or out suddenly. Snow reflections can look strange, and sometimes stations glow oddly at night. These are honestly, in my opinion, just core lighting issues that go far beyond the new routes. And for the most part, passenger behavior on platforms feels unchanged, and I even had a few runs where platforms were completely empty, though it has been noted that some improvements were made to how passengers board and unboard the trains and walk onto or leave the platforms and stations. Now, in terms of audio, I think the mix is strong overall, but we desperately need a separate slider for safety systems. On some trains, they are very quiet, while on others like the ALP45DP, for example, they are just ear-piercingly loud. Now, onto the three core routes, first starting with the Riviera line. This is actually the surprise of the bunch. Now, Rivet Games did have a hand in this, whose reputation hasn't always been the best, but I must say the Riviera line feels like a redemption for them. The scenery is lush, the Dawlish seawall looks fantastic, cliffs and boats along the shoreline look great, and there are nice touches like seagulls overhead at some of the stations. Now, it isn't flawless by any stretch of the imagination. Trees sometimes clip into trains, grass is growing through ballast and sleepers in spots, and the water can look a bit odd depending on the angle of the sun. Plus, there's too many camera barriers along the seawall, making it hard to walk along it properly. Dawlish also feels underpopulated, which breaks immersion, especially if you're playing in the summer. I feel like these beaches should be packed, but overall, this is one of the most scenic UK routes in the game, and driving the stock along this route is a treat as well. The Class 150 has seen some upgrades. Love the brake rub sounds, though maybe just a tad too loud. Love the rattling and squeaking within the cab at higher speeds. I think we have updated horns that at least sound better here to me than the TFW version. The Class 802 is very weighty. It has this deep engine growl and improved guard panel functionality than the Class 801 seen on East Coast Mainline. And the Class 220 Voyager is the standout here. Its cab, very crisp, the screens are detailed and operable, and its external roar completely drowns out everything at a station. And from my findings online, that is prototypical. Now, there are a few issues. The buggy next stop displays and recycled sounds do hold it back a little bit, and even cycling through power notches just feels a little bit slow on an Xbox controller. But overall, this is a strong DMU, and I'm very, very happy to see it in game. Now, gameplay is solid here. Tons of layers. You may have more or less depending on what content you own, but in my game specifically, I had 28 layers in total, 387 playable services, 8 scenarios, with 3 being tied to the Voyager. Those are Winterruptions, Limited Power, and Day of the Dispatcher, plus 5 base route scenarios. I really like the collectibles here too. Stacking hard hats, the confetti cannons. I have had a field day with that over my 40 hours. This route is also a route that will keep you busy. Constant grades up and down mean you can't just set the power and forget it, and things could even get trickier if you have engine stalls and you lose a bit of power while you're trying to climb a grade. I love these challenges. Now on to the Morristown line. For me, this was the most exciting addition, partly because I live in New Jersey and have a soft spot for New Jersey Transit, though I live in South Jersey at the moment, originally from Maryland, so I'm more familiar with MARC operations, but this one delivered in a lot of ways. New York Penn in particular feels alive, tons of traffic, and Hoboken has a great amount of movement too. Scenery, very detailed. We have urban New York through suburban Dover. The foliage variety makes it very, very believable. Bridges, very, very well modeled, and of course, we have the New York skyline visible in the distance. It actually feels like you're in a New York City suburb and not just in the middle of nowhere. Now, it isn't without problems though. Gridlocks at Penn Station, gantry poles are floating, ballast can look a little strange at times, and there are empty roads with no cars. The Bergen tunnels have glowing OHLE and very odd track visuals in the break between tunnels. Of course, lighting quirks in tunnels and at night do remain, but again, that's a core issue. But I need to say that signal progression into New York is finally right, thanks to Brandon's work on signals, and that makes a huge difference here. The rolling stock is strong. The Aero 3, very well modeled. Outside, you've got high quality decals, operable gangway chains, and inside, I really like the wood finishes and signage. This thing feels very loud and clunky in motion with strong flange sounds and joint clunks. The horn is very accurate, but definitely needs a little more volume and oomph to it. Now, the ALP46 rework fixed a lot of things: alerter sounds, suspension, ditch lights, digital displays, braking, and more, and it feels much better to drive. Now, with deluxe content, the ALP45 DP is another highlight here. Very smooth power mode changes. I love the voice prompts. That horn, oh my gosh, compared to the preview stream, sounds much, much better. It's very punchy, very clear with a squeak, and plenty of reverb. Hoboken terminal itself looks great. Love the signage, static stock in the yard, and the rush hour feel that you would expect from a route like this. I really do like the service variety here too. We have 2 journeys, Garden State and Journey to the Summit, split between Standard and Deluxe, plus 8 scenarios. We have Teaching Train tucked in, Safety Helmet back in the quiver, Waiting Online, and Deluxe scenarios, Twin Peaks, Rosa Rescue, and No Power, No Problem. Now, if you own the Acela DLC or New York to Trenton, you will get layered depot moves. Now, another few disappointments here is, number 1, we don't have freight on the Morristown line. There isn't even freight stock stationed in yards. I would have loved to see that, and the Aero 3 sets that you can see at New York Penn are AI only. It would have at least been nice to have them playable to Secaucus. Of course, for the NEC services that do stop there. Now on to Leipzig to Dresden, and this one gave me the most mixed feelings overall. Now on paper, it is the largest of the 3, with express, regional, S-Bahn, freight, and shunting included here, and in practice, definitely my least favorite. Too much stock feels carried over, scenery on the Dresden-Riesa stretch just looks a bit dated, and timetable bugs with services stuck or delayed completely break immersion. The new Riesa to Leipzig section is better with improved distance scenery, but the lack of trackside clutter across the whole route definitely keeps it from feeling as alive as it could have been. Services often end up stuck at signals. In my experience, I saw services delayed 40 to 45 minutes with lines of trains just stuck behind them, and this happened on almost every single timetable service that I played. I also want to spend a moment on the Friedrichstadt branch, which this part of the route definitely deserves its own little spotlight. Now, it wasn't included in the original Dresden to Riesa, and it absolutely stands out in this extended release. Most of the S-Bahn gameplay is happening along this branch, and it's where the Talent 2 shines as well. Love the updated suspension physics on this thing, very bouncy and lively, adds a whole new element to the drive. Now, scenery-wise, this section feels fresh and on par with what you see between Riesa and Leipzig. You can definitely tell the difference compared to the older Dresden to Riesa stretch, which in my opinion just doesn't look as good. Maybe I'm being a bit nitpicky, and I know some folks might not agree with me, but after spending a lot of time on Riviera and then coming back here, the older section really shows its age. From what I can tell, not much was improved. Now, the Friedrichstadt branch, though, is very, very well done. I love the inclusion of the yard. That whole line in that section is just very well done. It's just when you put that polished new section side by side with the older stretch, that gap in quality just becomes very noticeable to me. And in my opinion, if you're going to extend a route like this, the entire thing should be brought up to the same standard and not just the new portion. Now, on the audio side, there honestly isn't much to say because so much of it is pulled over from previous content. I personally didn't notice any meaningful differences, and if there had been, I feel like they would have been promoted more heavily in the articles leading up to the release. But the biggest disappointment by far is the promised ICET sound improvements that just didn't happen, which for me is another reason why this route ends up feeling more okay than great. But I have to say the standout here for Leipzig to Dresden is the BR294 shunter. It is beautifully modeled, it sounds very beefy, and actually is surprisingly easy to use. I had a blast with this thing, but the problem is that it is gated behind the Deluxe, and without it, the route feels like a pretty pricey expansion with no new stock. Now, if this logo had been a part of the standard edition, I think my verdict here would be a lot more positive. With the Deluxe, you're going to get 3 unique shunting scenarios for it: Leipzig's Big Helper, Chemical Chaos, and Can't Be Contained, alongside 6 others for the route. Now, stacking all of those Deluxe editions aside and trying to rank them, I think the Class 220 Voyager is the winner here. It's very fresh, very detailed, very powerful. The ALP 45DP is a very close second to me. Of course, expanding the Morristown timetable and giving the US a very meaningful new logo. I would probably put this on par with the HSP 46 in terms of quality. Now, the BR294 is excellent, but I just just don't think it's enough to carry Leipzig to Dresden alone, but together they do expand variety and keep Deluxe from feeling like a cash grab, but the Voyager is the star here when all is said and done. Now, as far as pricing and value, the bundles really do make the most sense here. Individually, you would spend far more than the Deluxe price. With discounts, I think that math works out. Now, in my case, with the loyalty discount, the Deluxe came in at around, I think, 75 to 80 US dollars, and for 3 routes plus 3 extra locos, I think that's a pretty good value compared to buying everything piecemeal. The special edition that bundles in compatible older DLC is also going to save you a lot if you're missing those as well. Now, for me, the Deluxe was worth it, but if you're cautious, I think the free starter pack is a safe entry point, especially if you want to bring over your older content and wait for a lot of bugs to get squashed. But I would have to say that Leipzig to Dresden by itself is worth waiting on until it is patched or discounted. The other twos I would recommend individually at full price though. But I want to talk about the elephant in the room, and that is this yearly release cycle. Now, in my opinion, the new features definitely do not justify a whole new numbered entry. I think a yearly release model is just so exhausting, and I don't think we need a whole new version every year just to package bundles. But with that said, I understand why they do it for visibility, but it feels more like a TSW 5.5 than a full step forward. We've seen them bundle things previously without releasing a new game. TSW 2 Rush Hour, that was great. I would very much so be here for that coming back, but I think at this point that's likely not going to happen. So is TSW 6 worth it? Well, if you're into UK scenery or New Jersey transit operations, there is a lot to enjoy here. If German content is your main draw and you want new stock, wait for a sale on that one. If you're sensitive to bugs and performance hiccups, definitely grab the free starter pack and revisit this later. But for me, I think the new features are promising, though they do need polish, and the routes are a mixed bag, with Riviera, of course, shining the brightest. The Morristown line coming in as a very, very close second. Honestly, if anything, I would probably put them on the same tier together. And Dresden to Leipzig coming in as just a meh from me. But I'm telling you, with that Deluxe, you are getting some good content. The ALP 45DP and Voyager are carrying that Deluxe, and the BR294 is also amazing as well. But that is just my experience. Those are my opinions. I want to know yours. If you've been playing TSW 6, what stood out to you, good or bad? Let me know everything that you're thinking and feeling down in the comments. Have you picked it up? Are you waiting for a sale? That's going to be it from me for this video. If you enjoyed watching, if you found it entertaining or informative, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe. Take care, guys, and happy rail simming.